Welcome, brave souls, to the chilling depths of horror and detail. Today we are going to share scary Wendigo horror stories. First story, an encounter with a Wendigo. At 1 minute to midnight, I took out the shot glass and put it beside the bottle of Jägermeister. I don't drink anymore after what happened to Pop. The one exception is the first day of September. The house is dark except for the warm glow of the 3 bulbs above the dining room table. I rub my tongue against the inside of my cheek. My mouth always goes dry. The only sound is the incessant ticking of the wall-mounted clock. At midnight, the soft bell sounds, a miniature version of church bells. I fill the glass and hold it aloft for a second and swallow with a deep breath. The subtle burn winds its way into my throat and stomach. I wash the shot glass by the light of the moon shining through the kitchen window. Loretta wouldn't mind my drinking, but a used shot glass beside the sink raises questions, and I never like to talk about it. All these years later, I still have nightmares. What I saw up on that mountain left a greater impression than any other event in my life. More than my children being born and my father drinking himself into an early grave. Loretta tells me I should talk about it, that it would help. She might be right. She always is. So here goes. I joined the park ranger service right out of school, and it was a perfect fit. I took to academics like a fish to the desert, and the outdoors always called. I passed my time in school daydreaming of the weekend and hiking or fly fishing with Pop. In the summer of '89, I was stationed in the Appalachians. Our jurisdiction encompassed trails leading all the way up the mountain. Up there the spruce thin out, and clouds hang heavy even in fine weather at the base. I spent the summer clearing fallen branches from the walking trails after a couple of vicious storms over the winter. It was hack work reserved for the junior, but the truth of it was I didn't mind. The peak of the summer heat was spent, and visitor numbers dropped as the weather began to turn. Persistent drizzle had kept me desk-bound for the morning, and we were about to get lunch when he burst through the door. He let out a moan and collapsed to the floor. Stanley leaned down and propped him in a seated position. Water dripped from his shoulder-length hair. His limbs hung limp by his side. I handed Stanley a cup of water. Stanley used his index finger to push down his chin. When the water hit his tongue, the man tensed and his eyelids flicked open. He flailed his limbs and knocked the glass from Stanley's hand. The glass shattered on the floor, but the man paid it no mind. "It is out there," he said. "What is?" The man half-turned and gripped Stanley's shirt and made balls with his fists. He repeated himself, pausing after each word. "It is out there." He started to sob. He released his grip on Stanley and buried his face in his hands. We lifted him onto a chair, and he pressed his face against the table and bawled. I grabbed the rucksack he had dropped to the floor. On the bottom right was a name tag behind a plastic sleeve. Lenny Porter from San Diego. There was a number at the bottom. "I'll make the call," Stanley said. When Stanley returned, Lenny was sat up staring blankly at the wall with red eyes. His face was gaunt, like he hadn't eaten in a week. Stanley closed the door. "I spoke to your father." Lenny didn't acknowledge the words. He sat motionless and unblinking. Stanley shuffled across to where I was sitting and pressed his palms on the table. Lenny left San Diego 2 weeks ago with a couple of friends. They planned to spend a month hiking the trail north. The father gave me 2 names, Freddie and Sabrina. When he heard their names, Lenny leaned over and picked up his backpack. He rummaged frantically until he pulled out a stack of Polaroids. He flicked through the photographs and then slapped one on the table. Stanley and I leaned over. Flanking a fitter and healthier Lenny were what must have been Freddie, tall and wearing a baseball cap, and Sabrina, shorter and wearing a bright yellow top with an almost fluorescent blue belt pulling the fabric tight around her waist. Lenny fingered the photo, and tears welled in his eyes. What happened to them? He sobbed and shook his head. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Stanley took a map down from the wall and pushed it in front of Lenny. "We are here. Where did you last see them?" Lenny blinked away tears and concentrated. He squinted at the map and pressed his index finger down and tapped it. Stanley took a pencil from his breast pocket and marked the map with a cross. "I'll notify the police. Get the truck ready to go." During training, they told us about search and rescue operations. The Rangers are the first responders. It was part of the job. Twisted ankles and wandering off the trail and getting lost are not uncommon and no reason to get the police involved. But this felt different. I secured the gear in the truck and Stanley appeared, flanked by a police officer in his early 30s. Harry is hitching a ride. His partner will take care of Lenny. We drove up the trail for about 15 minutes with the truck until it grew too narrow and treacherous. We split up the gear between us and set out on foot. Our destination was high up the mountain and far away from the trails. It was almost as if the trails deliberately avoided the area. We hacked our way through the thick forest. How had they ended up all the way out here? Stanley checked his watch constantly as we climbed. He wanted to get there before dark. I figured we would be lucky if we did. Stanley and Harry talked like old friends, asking about each other's wives and children. The park rangers are in effect an extension of law enforcement. It made sense to be friendly with the police, and living in a small mountain town made it almost inevitable. I like that. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Stanley checked the map. "Almost there. Get your torches." "All right." Harry reached in his backpack and pulled out a flashlight. I did the same. "Do you know what's up this way?" Stanley said. I shook my head. "Somewhere up here is an old cabin. Hunters used it as a base back when you could still hunt up this way. The cross our friend Lenny put on the map is just about on top of it. Let's see if we can get there before there's no light left." We didn't make it by dark. Twilight gave to night with little warning. Soon we were relying on the light from our torches. Being on a trail in the sunshine lends a sense of security up here, even when you are alone. Now, surrounded by black, and with the trail long behind us, an uneasiness grew in my stomach for the first time. Stanley paused and swept his torch. He muttered something under his breath. Harry took a few steps to the right, lowering his head and squinting. "There it is," he said. At the farthest reaches of Harry's torchlight, the cabin emerged from the woods. Stanley tapped Harry on the shoulder. "My eyes aren't what they used to be." The cabin should have been a source of comfort, but it only added to my unease. The roof was half caved in and trees encroached on all sides, gnarled branches reaching out like fingers. The structure looked like it belonged more to the forest than to man. The only door hung askew on warped and rusted hinges. 2 windows had long ago lost their glass. Stanley shouldered open the door with a grunt. Leaves and branches covered the floor, blown in through the open windows and roof. We dumped the gear inside. Stanley took out a lantern and tied it to a horizontal branch a few paces from the front door. He flicked it on, and the light shone bright. If there was anyone lost nearby, they could not fail to see it. We split up and entered the forest, guided by our torches. Stanley instructed us to go no further than the reach of the lantern. It was our lighthouse on the horizon. The wind blew and fresh from the north. I buttoned up my jacket against the cold. The beam from the torch was strong, but aside from the narrow cone of light, the forest was a deep and full dark. Stanley and Harry called out the names of the 2 missing, Freddie and Sabrina. I did the same. Every few steps I stopped and listened. The forest was alive with the scurrying of animals and insects going about their business, and the constant rustling of the wind through the leaves. It was hopeless. This was needle in the haystack stuff. Freddie or Sabrina could be unconscious on the ground a few feet to my left, and I would never see them. We should camp and wait for first light. Harry's voice cut through the night, louder and with urgency. I skipped towards the sound as fast as I dared. The 2 torchlights of Harry and Stanley played close together, The beams of light trained on the forest floor. "You might not want to see this," Stanley said as I came up behind them. It was too late. By the light of the torches I saw him, flat on his back, arms and legs bent at unnatural angles. I almost gagged when I saw his face. The left side caved in, a red, bloody mess fragmented with the white of the skull. The right side was intact, one green eye staring up, wide and unblinking. The remainder of the face had an almost serene expression. It was not the look of fear that you would expect from someone about to have half their face crushed. No skin remained below the neck, the contents of his torso picked so clean I could see his full spine. "What did that?" I stammered. I didn't get an answer. Stanley fished the Polaroid from his pocket and studied it under the torchlight. He handed it to Harry. "It's him. It's Freddy." Harry jumped and swung his torch out into the woods. "I swear I heard someone talking out there," Harry said. "We've been calling out their names too." "No, it wasn't that. It sounded like whispering. It's the wind through the trees." Harry didn't look convinced. He called out the name of Sabrina and listened. Only the sounds of the forest. Stanley shushed him. "There's nothing we can do for the boy now. Let's get back to the cabin and radio down the news." Stanley took a few quick steps towards the cabin and motioned for us to follow. He seemed agitated. I didn't blame him. I followed on his heels. Harry lingered, searching the woods with his torch until he too fell in behind. The inside of the cabin felt like a sanctuary. Out of the wind and removed from the mangled corpse of Freddy, my mind processed the sight. I had gutted my fair share of fish, but this was different. I put my hand to my stomach and swallowed hard. I was overcome with a compulsion to repeat my unanswered question. What could have done that? Before I could, Harry gave us some more bad news. There was no response on the radio, only static. It wasn't surprising. The cabin sat in a depression between the peak we crested on our way in and the taller peak beyond. "We have to go back," I said. Harry shook his head. "Not in the dark, and not when there's someone still out there. We don't know if that girl is dead or alive," Stanley said. "I heard her. You heard a whisper is what you said. And if she was there, she would have come to the light. She'll come to the lantern, and we'll wait for her." Harry threw out his arms in protest. Stanley sighed. "If she's dead, then we'll find her in the light of morning. If she's alive and nearby enough to whisper in our ears, then she'll come to us." Two rectangles of light shone through the open windows from the lantern outside, but the front room of the cabin still had dark, shadowy corners. Stanley took a second lantern and tied it to an old light fixture hanging from the ceiling. The room lit up as if under sunlight, but a cold light that gave the room a bare and unwelcome feel. I busied myself clearing a space on the floor beside the black pot belly stove at the rear of the room. Stanley and Harry stood as statues, staring up at the wall behind me. I turned. Etched in black, soot onto the blank wall, was some kind of monster, long-limbed and with an elongated skull. It stared back at us through white blobs left clear of black. I took a step back and almost stumbled. "What is that?" I didn't need an answer. You don't live and work up in the mountains here without hearing the stories. Stories told dismissively by daylight, like you would talk about the monsters you imagined hiding in your closet as a kid. By night and around a camp fire, the stories take on a graver tone, and the name of the monster is only ever whispered. Wendigo. Of course, I had never seen one. But if I had to imagine what one might look like, the painting in soot taking up the full height of the wall of the cabin was an exact match. I waited for one of the two men behind me to dismiss what we saw drawn on the wall, to make light of it and crack a joke. Neither did. Stanley uttered a simple instruction. No one goes outside without a weapon. Our shadows danced on the walls. The lantern hanging from the ceiling did not move. Stanley leaned and looked out the window. The lantern hanging from the tree branch swung back and forth like the pendulum of a grandfather clock. There was wind tonight, but not enough to do that. Stanley bent down and fished a rifle from the bag. My heart beat like a drum in my ears. And then something else. Whispers. What sounded like the whispers of a girl, entreating us, inviting us out into the darkness of the forest. Stanley inched open the door with the muzzle of his rifle. He stepped through the gap and watched the lantern on the tree come to a rest. He stood beside the lantern and searched the corners of the forest illuminated by the light. Nothing moved. Harry unclipped the leather strap on his belt and drew a pistol and went to the doorway. I felt naked and exposed with my hands empty. I took a step backwards, the Wendigo drawn and soot looming large behind and burning a hole in the back of my head. A shadow flashed through the trees, and Stanley swung the muzzle of the rifle and shot, the crack piercing the night. He raised the rifle to his shoulder and flicked it from side to side, searching for movement. The lantern bobbed up and down. With a rush, a long-limbed creature dropped onto Stanley from above. He screamed and wrenched the rifle around, but had it knocked from his grip. Harry fired 2 shots, and the creature let out a wail. It bounded towards the door, and Harry slammed it shut. He pointed the pistol to the closed door and emptied the chamber. Harry took a step back and shot me a glance. Through the whole ordeal, I had not moved. I had barely breathed. Was it dead? Was Stanley okay? The window! I screamed. The long, thin fingers of the creature wrapped themselves around the inside of the window frame. Then the head appeared, uncannily human-like, but distorted and disfigured. The chin elongated and the teeth like razors and drenched in blood. Its eyes white and piercing, just like the etching on the wall. Harry grabbed me by the arm and hauled me into the back room of the cabin. He slammed shut the flimsy door. The back room was windowless, and the only light was a thin strip at the base from the lantern in the front room. We crouched together, our shoulders pressed against the door. We listened. The light patter of footsteps. 2 thin strips of black interrupted the strip of light at the base of the door. Something stood on the other side. "Come out. It is okay." It sounded like Stanley. Had he killed it? "Come out." Harry straightened, and I grabbed his shoulder. "Don't open the door," I whispered. "They say a Wendigo can imitate those it kills." My hand brushed against Harry's back and knocked the flashlight from his jacket pocket. I fumbled in the darkness until I found it, and I flicked it on. I scanned the room for something, anything we could use as a weapon. I walked away from the door and kicked at the twigs and leaves on the floor. All that was good for was kindling. Something smelled rotten. There must be a dead rat somewhere. "It's Stanley," Harry said. I pointed the torch to him. His eyes were wide and wild. He must have killed it. He smiled at me and took a step back. The door slammed open and carried with it the rotten stench. What stood in the doorway was not Stanley, but the Wendigo. Harry kneeled before it, breathing in the noxious fumes. I shone the torch onto the creature. Its gray skin pulled tight on a gaunt frame. And then something glinted, a belt buckle. Around the creature's waist was the bright blue belt Sabrina wore in the Polaroid. "Sabrina?" I said. It turned to me and paused, tilting its head to the side. I thought I saw a glimmer of recognition, a brief moment where it knew the name. But then it snarled, its mouth opening wide and dripping with saliva. It wrapped 2 hands around the neck of Harry and leaned in. I acted instinctively, without thinking. I jumped at the creature, swinging the only weapon I had, the torch. I brought it down on its head with all the strength and adrenaline I had. It bucked and sent me flying into the front room beyond. I threw out my hands against the fall and grabbed the lantern Stanley had hung from the ceiling. It could not bear my weight, and the cord pulled out from the ceiling, and I fell with a thud. I jumped up at a burst of warmth from my stomach. The lantern had smashed on impact, and the white-hot filament broke free of its casing. I groaned in pain, and the creature lumbered forwards. I retreated into the corner of the room and pulled my knees up to my chest. It stood over me and opened its mouth, razor-sharp teeth gleaming white. Then the smell of smoke. The creature hopped and then scrambled backwards. The leaves and twigs covering the floor ignited under the heat from the lamp filament. A small flame burst up and the creature covered its face. Fire. It didn't like fire. I crawled forwards and swept as much of the kindling as I could grab onto the flames. The fire grew and the creature screamed. As smoke filled the room, it coughed and spluttered. It made one last effort to come at me and then retreated out of the room and into the forest. I went to the back room and grabbed Harry. We stumbled out of the cabin, the fire now spreading up the walls and to the roof. Stanley lay below the lantern hung from the tree, unmoving and with a chunk of flesh missing from his throat. We ran into the forest in the opposite direction the creature had gone. We first climbed up to the crest and then back down the mountain. We stumbled our way down by the light of the torch. Adrenaline coursed through our veins, and we imagined that thing right behind us, stalking us in the dark. When we finally crossed the trail, we followed it back down to the ranger station. A team of police and National Guard hiked up to the cabin after the sun rose. The cabin had burned to the ground, the pot-belly stove the only item that survived the blaze. The bodies of Stanley and Freddie were brought down. They said Stanley's flesh had been picked clean down to the skeleton. That was the first day of September, 1989. Sabrina was listed as a missing person, and her father spent a month in the mountains searching for her. But she's gone in every sense that matters. Turned to a Wendigo by hunger for human flesh. She transformed into something unrecognizable from where it began. Around campfires, people still tell stories of the Wendigo. I don't know if they truly believe they are out there, but I know I have seen it. Sometimes there really is a monster in the closet. Second story. My son brought something home from the woods. My husband and I always wanted our son to be adventurous. We wanted to watch him grow up asking questions about everything, seeking out answers, and looking for adventure. It seems like whenever parents have a deep desire for how they want their children to be, their children instinctively know and go the complete opposite direction. As Sam grew up, he became very introverted and would actively ask when it was time for bed. He loved to sleep, and our doctor gave a lot of explanations. All the illnesses had been checked and crossed out before he said, "I think he just likes to get away from reality. He likes his dreams more than he enjoys life." This was at the age of 8. This actually depressed us as parents. What could be so wrong, so uninteresting about his life that he would come home and just sleep? The doctor recommended that we plan family activities that were geared towards him as a way to engage him in life. Give him something to be excited about after school. So, for our very first trip, we decided we would go on a hike. The mountains were about an hour away, and we considered this a mild introduction to our new family habit. When we told Sam where we were going, he was ecstatic. We knew then that hiking had been the right activity. On Saturday, we threw together some backpacks, lunch, water, and even a magnifying glass so Sam could inspect everything closely. He was so excited the entire way there. We were all thrilled. When we parked at the trailhead, Sam leapt out of the car and almost ran up the trail without us. I had to call him back so we could keep an eye on him. The hike was short, maybe half a mile, but Sam tried to run it like a marathon. We kept calling for him to come back and check out this bird, or this butterfly, or the log that looked like a grandpa's face. He would come and look to humor us, but then run ahead. Eventually, we gave up trying to point things out and let him just run through the woods. We were pleased that he had taken so well to the trip. For once, Charlie and I felt like we knew what we were doing as parents. Anyone who's a parent knows how that feels. We got to the end of the trail and ate our lunch. We were at a ledge along the mountain that was more like a hill. The sun was high overhead, and we could see over the trees for miles. Sam quickly downed his lunch, and we let him run off into the trees. Not too far, I warned him. He obeyed, and we could always see him. From the rock where we sat, I watched Sam while Charlie went to the bathroom. I watched Sam pick up sticks, swing them at bushes and tree trunks until the stick broke, then pick up another one. He picked one up that was too short to be swung, but he smiled wide at it and ran around with it in front of him, using both hands. Finally, he ran over to me and said, "Mom, feel this stick? It feels so cool." "Oh yeah." I grinned, taking the stick from him. It was in the shape of a Y, and when I grabbed one of the sides of the Y, it was perfectly smooth. It looked like someone had taken a knife and whittled a bigger branch down into this smooth, slingshot-shaped stick. The two sides of the Y were curved, almost like bicycle handlebars. "That's very smooth," I said to encourage him. He looked at me funny, then ran back into the woods to keep playing. We packed up lunch, stuffed everything back in the backpacks, and announced that we were ready to hike back. Sam came back without a fuss, and we began walking down the trail. Instead of running ahead, Sam lagged behind, still clutching the Y stick. He held it in front of him with both hands as before and was swinging it around slowly, as if it were a magnifying glass and he were searching for something. "Come on, Sam," Charlie encouraged gently when he stood in one place for too long. We both had to stop because he had fallen so far behind. He was pointing his stick into the trees, arms outstretched. He kept looking from the stick to the trees, as if trying to line something up. We both waited patiently for a few seconds, but the heat was getting to us, and we were ready for an air-conditioned car. "Sam, honey, let's go," I called. "Okay." He called back but didn't move. Charlie sighed and walked back to him. He put his hands on both of Sam's shoulders and guided him down the trail. The whole time, Sam kept both hands firmly on the stick and tried his best to point it back towards the trees where he'd been looking. He didn't point it towards where he had been standing, I noticed later, but at a spot past the trail and into the trees. Always at one position. Charlie finally got him to where I was, and we kept walking. Sam eventually stopped pointing his stick and instead kept it down in front of him, both hands still being used to hold either side of the Y. We drove home, pleased that Sam was taking home a souvenir. Our day trip had worked. He was getting involved with life. We were one step closer to our adventurous son. Over the next couple of days, lots of things started happening. They all seemed disjointed and not connected in the moment. Later, memory would connect them for me. Sam went back to his sleeping routine. He would come home from school, go into his room, and play for a bit by himself while dinner was being made. I got him to work on homework, then served dinner when Charlie got home. After that, he went straight to bed by his own choice. This wasn't abnormal for him, so I wasn't any more concerned than usual. A few nights after we got home, I noticed that Sam's bedroom light was on even though he'd gone to bed hours ago. His door was closed, so I went to go and turn off his light for him. I figured he might have left it on when he fell asleep or something. The second I opened the door, Sam leapt off the floor and jumped into bed, like he knew he was in trouble. It was only 7 in the evening. I wasn't about to yell at him for not going to bed when he said he was. His rapid jump into bed had me worried, though. "Sam, what's up?" "Nothing," he said in that kiddish tone that screams, "I didn't do anything." I looked around the room and saw what I always saw. His toys were out and lined up in some game he must have been playing. Nothing was out of place or irregular. "You jumped up as soon as I came in. Anything wrong?" "No." "Okay," I said slowly, unsure of what else to say. He looked at me with untold terror in his eyes. "Are you sure nothing is wrong?" I pressed. "I can hang out with you for a bit, if you want." He stared right through me, his eyes wide. It took him a few seconds to reply. "No, Mother, I'm going to bed now." "See, can you turn out the light?" I blinked. He's never called me Mother in his life. I should have pushed myself in and sat on his bed and talked until he admitted what was wrong. But I didn't. Charlie called my name, and it distracted me. I wished him a good night, turned off the light, and shut the door. Talking later on with Charlie about it, Charlie thought that maybe he had somehow discovered masturbation, even at his young age. When you rub around on the floor the right way, it just happens, Charlie told me. Apparently, that was how he had discovered it. So, I chalked the situation up to that. Sam also kept carrying that white stick around everywhere. He always kept it within reach. During dinner, he kept it on the table. When I told him that sticks don't belong on the dining room table, he kept it on his chair next to him. He took it to bed and kept it next to his head. He even took it to school. I tried fighting him on it once, but he claimed he was taking it to show and tell. I was about to insist that he leave it home, but he looked like he might cry if I came down firm. So I let him on the condition that if his teacher mentioned it to me that I'd make him leave it home. He agreed. One day, Charlie was taking out the garbage and the bag caught on the door jamb. The contents of the bag spilled all over the floor, and he quietly cursed and went to get another bag. That was when he found about 20 of Sam's toys in the trash. They varied from stuffed animals to action figures. Confused, Charlie asked me if I had thrown them away or was punishing Sam for something. I told him no and was equally puzzled. Sam, for some unknown reason, had been throwing his own toys away. Together, after dinner, we sat down with Sam at the table to ask about the toys. We saw it as a cry for help. They were selected, he said in response. They weren't doing a good enough job, so they were fired. Their time was up. Charlie told Sam that we don't throw toys away because they cost money and we don't waste things. Sam nodded, but I saw his hands clutch the sides of the Y stick tightly under the table. He was stressing. Something was going on. We ended the conversation on a light note, and Sam understood why we were upset. He promised not to throw away any more toys, then ran off to bed. I just remember thinking how strange the sentence was, their time was up. That was an adult's line, not something you hear from kids. Sam's school sent an email to all the parents about 2 weeks after our hiking trip. The principal pleaded with parents to not let their children come to school if their child was sick, as there was a very serious flu going around the school. He even admitted that 5 teachers and 30 students had been sick over the last week alone. I showed it to Charlie, but he didn't find it as weird as I did. Hand sanitizer breeds super bugs, he shrugged. Just tell Sam to wash his hands more often. The final straw for me came a few nights later. It was a Wednesday night when I woke up for no reason. Charlie was snoring next to me, but in a lull between snores, I heard a whisper. Fear seized my throat, and I lifted my head off the pillow slowly to peer at the bedroom door. Someone moved in the dark, stumbling along. Someone small and short. Sam. Irritated, I got up and walked to the door. I saw Sam skip away, as if he were crossing a field of spiders and was desperate not to get any on his shoes. Sam, I whispered, walking out after him. I turned the corner into the family room, but he wasn't there. I heard bare feet race across the kitchen floor, and that made me angry. The little shit was hiding from me. I walked through the family room and noticed that the clock on the wall was way louder than usual. Or maybe I was hypersensitive because I was exhausted. When I entered the kitchen, Sam was facing me. He stood next to the fridge, and the small LEDs on it lit up his expression. He was terrified, and his little Y stick was pointed right at me. Sam, I hissed in annoyance. It's late. Go back to bed. I need water, he said, still looking at me with wide eyes. It was an obvious lie, but one not abnormal for kids caught up past their bedtime. Okay, then get some water, I sighed. Can you get it? He asked, still clutching the stick and pointing it my way. He must have seen my mom look, because he re-emphasized. Please. I walked forward, and that's when I noticed that he pointed the stick around me. He was pointing at something behind me. I whirled around really fast and stared into the empty darkness of the family room. The clock was still noticeably loud. It sounded like a person saying the actual words. Tick-tock, tick-tock. I looked around the room for a full 30 seconds. Nothing moved. "What are you doing up, Sam?" I asked, turning back to face him. He looked at me with real, true terror in his eyes. The stick was shaking in his hand. "Sam," I hissed, snapping a little bit. "It's not time yet," he stuttered, barely glancing at me. His gaze was transfixed beyond me. "I'm not ready yet." For half a second, I wondered if he was pretending to sleepwalk. Then I wondered if he actually was sleepwalking. Then my tiredness washed over me, and I got irritable again. "It's time for bed," I insisted, walking towards him. Still, he kept his eyes behind me, and the stick pointed into the family room. Okay, he said, defeated as I approached. He took slow, unwilling steps towards the family room. I stood behind him, watching to make sure he went to bed. I saw his head look back and forth, scanning the room as he entered. He was looking for something. He looked back at me with uncertainty. Suddenly he screamed, "Emma, watch out!" I instinctively whirled around, hands up and ready to attack whatever was there. Nothing but darkness and the far kitchen wall. I ground my teeth and glared down at him. He was still shaking, pointing his stick into the empty kitchen. I was beyond annoyed now. This stick had been out of control for weeks. "I think you need a break from this," I said, snatching the stick from his hand. No, he screeched. Sam practically leapt at me, but I jumped out of the way. This was the only way, I assured myself. This stick wasn't healthy after all. Don't, he cried and yelled, following me through the family room and into the hall. All the attention that he'd pointed into the kitchen was now directed at me. He tried to jump and grab at the stick, but I held it above my head. I felt like a teenage older sibling, teasing my younger brother. But this was necessary. I regretted waking Charlie up, but I pushed my way into my room, tossed the stick onto the floor, and turned back to get Sam out. "Give it to me, give it to me, give it to me," he demanded without taking a breath. I pushed him out and shut the bedroom door. I flipped the lock on the handle and sighed. "What's going on?" Charlie mumbled. I took the stick away. "He was playing with it all night," I sighed, coming back to bed. Sam was pounding on the door. I convinced Charlie that we should ignore him, let him tire himself out, and tomorrow we would lecture him. He verbally agreed, though I could sense that he didn't agree inside. It took an hour, but Sam gave up, and we went to sleep. The next morning, my throat felt like I had swallowed sandpaper. The flu. Of course. My stomach rumbled and rousted me out of bed. I found myself starting to run to the master bathroom after my stomach turned nauseous. I puked up spaghetti from dinner the night before. Stumbling out of the bathroom, I had to move aside for Charlie, who couldn't make it to the toilet and threw up into the sink. "Not you too," I sighed sympathetically. "I haven't been this sick since I was a kid," he moaned, rinsing his mouth out. I rubbed my eyes, still tired from Sam's ordeal last night, and got in the shower with the lights off, hoping it would help my light sensitivity. Charlie decided to call in sick and rest for the day. I got ready for the day, so I wouldn't lounge around in my pajamas all day, feeling even more sick. When I was completely ready, I unlocked the bedroom door and stepped out. Sam was nowhere in sight, which meant he had gone back to bed. "Good. Sam, I hope you're getting ready for school," I said loudly. No reply. I went to his room and found the door shut as usual. I twisted the handle and pushed, but the door was stuck. "The hell?" I muttered quietly. Using my shoulder, I shoved hard against the door. I heard a clatter, then the door opened. As I entered, I saw three things right away. 1. A chair had been placed under the door handle, preventing it from opening easily. 2. The window was wide open, with the screen missing. And 3. Sam wasn't in his room. We called the police immediately after searching the house from top to bottom. If we hadn't called them, I have no idea where we would have started. Should we have driven around, looking for him? Called his friends' houses to see if they knew where he was? The police were helpful, and I spent a miserable half day sitting by the phone, puking my guts out and worrying about Sam. The police were out driving around, searching for Sam with his picture taped to their dashboards. Charlie was dead asleep when I wandered into the bedroom, debating lying down. But I couldn't sleep while Sam was missing. The sickness would let me, of course, but the guilt of falling asleep while this was going on was too much. I saw the stick, which had landed partially under the bed when I threw it last night. All this because of a stick? Maybe the doctor was wrong. Maybe he did have something wrong with him, but it was mental, psychological. Maybe instead of a doctor, we should take him to a psychologist. In an attempt to stay awake, I decided to search the house for the 15th time. This time, I carried the stick with me. "Sam," I said, loud enough to be heard while I walked through the family room, kitchen, and to the stairs. Maybe he was hiding in the storage room downstairs. Maybe behind a few boxes. "Sam," I said again, "I have your stick. I'm sorry I took it. Please come out. Mommy is really worried. You aren't in trouble." I descended the stairs, and halfway down, I thought I heard him reply. It was faint, far away. The words were impossible to make out. "Sam," I cried desperately, spinning around on the stairs to try and figure out if he was upstairs or downstairs. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a leg dart around the corner at the bottom of the stairs towards the storage room. My hunch was correct. I sped down the stairs and turned the corner. The door was closed. I tried to twist the handle, but he had locked it. "Sam, honey, open the door, please," I pleaded while reaching for the key at the top of the door frame. When he didn't unlock the door, I stuck the key in and twisted. The door popped open to reveal our pitch-black storage room. The room was in the middle of the house and had no windows. It contained our water heater and the control system for the heat and AC. The room was so large, though, that Charlie had built shelves for us to keep our seasonal decorations, our camping supplies, and extra food and water. "Sam," I said more quietly, feeling uneasy. Something about the room was getting to me. "How does the clock tick, Mother?" Sam said from somewhere in the room. I froze. The word mother made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Something's not right. Something's not right. Sam, see, come on out now, I stuttered. Light spilled in from the doorway, but it didn't illuminate enough of the room for me to search. I slowly stepped toward the center of the room where a string hung down from a single bulb in the ceiling. With one hand, I kept a hold of the stick. With the other, I reached out to search for the string. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there somewhere. Suddenly, the door slammed shut, and at that exact instant, my hand brushed against hair. Long, greasy hair at my shoulder height. Sam wasn't that tall. The hair was tangled and long. I yelped and jumped back, startled by the door and the hair simultaneously. Sam giggled. "Do you know how the clock ticks?" It came from my left, along the wall. The hair had been to my right. What else was in here with us? I was paralyzed. I couldn't see a damn thing. My phone was upstairs, so I couldn't use that as a flashlight. The ceiling light was somewhere in front of me, and the door was somewhere behind me. Every time I started to reach out, I remembered touching the greasy hair and recoiled. "Charlie!" I called upward, hoping he could hear me, hoping he was awake. "Tick-tock, tick-tock," Sam said again. My brain instantly remembered the sound the clock had made the night before. It was the same voice, faintly a voice, and faintly background noise at the same time. "Sam," my voice hoarsely whispered. I had to throw up again. I swallowed bile and felt one more time for the string. It brushed my hand, and I jumped back before realizing that I was feeling string, not greasy hair. Resolutely, I launched my hand out and grabbed at the string. It swung into my hand, and I yanked on it hard. The single bulb buzzed to life, and something moved to my right. I screamed at the top of my lungs when I saw white and black. It's taken me a long time to place the shape, but now I'm certain. A deer's skull partially covered by stringy hair darted away from the light, circling behind me. In absolute terror, I squeezed my eyes shut and didn't dare open them. In the battle for fight or flight, I turned into the ostrich, burying my head and hoping it didn't see me. I started sobbing and wanted to run for the door, but I was too scared to open my eyes. "Mommy," Sam called from my left. I didn't respond. I was sobbing too hard. "Mommy, help, I'm stuck." Very, very slowly, I moved one finger and looked to the side. Sam was huddled up on the top shelf. I couldn't see his face, but I saw jeans and his favorite shirt. "See, come down and let's go," I whispered. "I can't, it's going to get me," Sam whimpered. I tried hard not to sob again. "Come and get me, please," he begged. I fought through the terror and stepped toward the shelf, still covering my face and using a small gap in my fingers to navigate. When I reached the shelf, I closed my eyes and held my arms up. "Climb into my arms, Sam. I'll get you down and we'll go get your dad." My voice broke at the end. "I'm stuck. My shirt is caught," he cried. Okay, I said, trying to be brave for him. "Guide my hand to where it is, and I'll get you loose." He paused. "It's at the back of the shelf. You can't reach." I bit my lip to stop its trembling. With both eyes still closed, I placed my hands on the top shelf and my foot on the bottom shelf. The stick was placed on the shelf, so I could use both my hands. I hoisted myself up so I could reach and balance precariously. "Where is it, honey?" I asked, refusing to open my eyes. "Reach here," he said, and I could feel him rotate so I could reach over him. I did, and my hand ran straight into a mess of tangled, greasy hair. My eyes opened in shock. It stared back at me for only a millisecond. In that millisecond, it spoke, not with words, but in my head. "Do you know how the clock ticks? It is fed by death." The shelf under my feet collapsed, and as I fell, my hands pulled the shelf until it toppled over, coming down on top of me. I woke up in the hospital, much to Charlie and Sam's relief. It was a tumult of information and questions. They asked why I was down there, and instead of sounding insane, I said that I'd been searching for Sam again just in case. Sam had been found walking on the road in the general direction of the hiking spot. He wasn't very far, thankfully, and was unharmed. When Charlie practically yelled, asking why the hell he had left in the middle of the night alone, Sam said he needed to find another stick to stop the monsters. The police were, of course, recommending that he talk to a psychologist. They'd overheard the conversation. Charlie didn't wake up until the police were at our door with Sam in hand. That was about an hour after the shelf had collapsed on me. Sam and Charlie had gone looking for me in the house and found me under the collapsed shelving. The police had been right there, thankfully, and I was rushed off to the hospital. Some of my ribs were broken, and so was my left leg. The shelf that had collapsed on me had held our camping tent, the fake Christmas tree, and a few other half-empty boxes. I was lucky that it wasn't the food storage shelving. The door was locked when they got to it, and the key wasn't in the lock, so they had to break it down. The second Sam saw the scene, he apparently stood over me in a protective stance, looking all around. Charlie left to get the police before they left upstairs. A couple of days after I got released from the hospital, and after Charlie had recovered from a flu that knocked him off his feet, I got to talk to Sam. I asked him outright what had been going on. It took a few minutes of him denying that anything was wrong. I saw the monster, I admitted, which a parent really shouldn't do to their child. "You did?" he asked incredulously. I nodded. "You and Dad never saw them before. When did you see them?" "Them?" I asked nervously. Sam told me what had been happening for the last few weeks. He had stumbled upon the stick by literally tripping over it. It had spoken to him, and he took it to play with it. Whenever he had the stick, he could see the monsters. They were scary, but they stayed away when I pointed the stick at them, he said. A few of them had followed us home, walking alongside us on the trail. They came into the house at night and snuck around. They came into Sam's room, our room, everywhere. They told me that someone had to die. They told me that you had to die. So, he offered the monsters toy sacrifices to satiate their hunger. But they were unsatisfied. Whenever I didn't have the stick, I could feel them try to grab me. But they stayed away whenever I had the stick. They kept telling me that your time was up. Whose time? Yours, Mommy. They sat with him at night and changed TikTok at him. They tried to convince him to put the stick down. They offered him candy that the big, blurry man pulled out of thin air. At school, they followed him and said they would hurt people until he put away the stick. 5 teachers and 30 students got the flu while they threatened that. He held onto the stick as often as he could and patrolled the house at night to keep them out of my room. That was until I took the stick. Apparently, he had grabbed the stick from a skeleton in the woods. It looked like an animal skeleton. He had seen another one just like it when he got the first one, so he was going to go back and get the second one, so the monsters would stop smiling. One had followed him on the streets, he said. But now, they were all gone. And after looking through the mess of the collapsed shelving, so was the stick. Sam told his psychologist about our conversation. His psychologist told me very angrily that I should not have admitted anything like that because it fed into his delusions. He was being looked at for possible schizophrenia. I'm thinking I should be tested too. How else do I explain everything that happened? One detail stands out that I can't explain. I had unlocked the door to the storage room and left the key in the handle. So why was the key found dangling from the light bulb string? Third story. I got stuck with a pet demon. Do you know how scary these things are? I don't have to tell you how scared I was when I saw it. Like scared shitless. I didn't believe it was real at first. I thought maybe I was dreaming. But soon after I concluded that I was dealing with a creature that's out of this world. It isn't every day that you meet with intergalactic, demented creatures or demons from hell or whatever other evil places. I just found it on my couch one morning after I woke up. It was the oddest and scariest thing I've ever laid eyes on. When it saw me too, it started howling, raging like crazy, probably demanding food. The game was on, and it was watching it like it was the biggest football fan in the world. Then it started dragging its ass on the carpet, circling around me. The creature didn't attack me or anything. He seemed harmless, but still goddamn horrible to look at. It burped and started running through the living room until it went headfirst into the furniture, where it instantly blacked out. I honestly thought it was going to bite or kill me when it'd wake up, and my heart was racing inside my chest, drumming so hard like Tommy Lee was playing a solo in a Motley Crue live concert. I saw a letter on the carpet, and I wondered where or whom it was from. Aeon, of course, that's when the trouble started. Let me just write it here verbatim, and then I can go on with it. It was written in red ink. The letters were pulsating different shades, and I was pretty sure it had to be supernatural or the likes of that. Luckily, I took a photo before reading it all. You'll see why it was a good idea. Dear Jonathan, hello there. Sorry to send Fluffy out of the blue, but I am really busy at the moment, and I need you to take care of him for a few days. These are troubling times down here. I had a few guys who went overboard with drinking and gambling, and they haven't been doing their duty properly. I won't get into detail about how things here work, as you're not eligible for a place yet. You're very close, though. I don't even want to start telling you what a crazy party we had on Halloween. We had stripping demon hookers, we smoked DMT, drank whiskey that was 1,000 years old, brewed right down here with our special recipe. Good times. I left one bottle in the fridge for you as well. Just be careful with drinking too much or you'll go insane. It kind of burns your throat like really bad, and if you do shots, you'll be able to breathe flames. No, not really. Joking, duh. I like bringing the lols. You know what I'm saying? Seriously though, don't drink too much in a single day. If you have just a single on the rocks, you should be fine. If you actually do get drunk on it and see the dancing devils, just ignore them. They're not real. Or are they? LOL, JK. Anyways, the reason I sent Fluffy over is that I have some business to attend here on Earth, and I can't leave him alone down there. The last time I did it, he ate my sidekick after he forgot to feed him on time. I can't carry him with me either because, well, I got important stuff to do that require my utmost attention. So, I have chosen you to watch for my dear old fluffers. Ain't he great? Did he get to run head first into the furniture by now? He does that when he's in a new environment. Speaking of, you have to feed time every Wednesday at 12 p.m. sharp. Not a minute earlier, not a minute later. I can't even highlight the importance of that. Even if he is a demon, he still eats the usual raw stuff. Raw hearts, raw kidneys, raw muscles. You know, everything meaty basically. Also, aside from that, he requires milk daily. Just a little. It doesn't matter when you'll give it to him. He will not refuse it. Just make sure it's not too much, otherwise he'll start barking and howling like crazy and your neighbors will hear him, and you don't want that to happen. No bueno. He does like strawberries from time to time, but I recommend giving those only on Friday mornings and only in moderation, like 2 or 3 of them, because he has a tendency of getting bloated and he'll start shitting all over your house. And you do not want that to happen because his shits are very acidic and will punch holes in the floor. You'll have a shitty floor. Get it? Anywho, I gotta bounce. I'll come to get Fluffy later this month. Do not get physically or verbally violent with him. Toodles. Yours truly, son. P.S. If you're lucky and he likes you, he'll try and communicate with you. So if you ask him a yes or no question, he'll reply with 1 bark. I personally call them barks, for yes, 2 for no. Try it if you get the chance. P.S. If I see that you took good care of him, I'll make sure you get a big fat reward. If no, then, right after I finished reading it, the letters scrambled all by themselves into the face of a devil who smirked and winked at me right before vanishing. What the fuck, right? If you're like me, then you're wondering what the hell was going on. I just experienced 2 supernatural events in less than 5 minutes, and I didn't even think that there was a word in the dictionary to describe how scared I was. The tag on his collar was in the shape of a pink heart with the name Fluffy written on it, so I knew he didn't lie in the letter, but Fluffy? There was a huge discrepancy between the name and the actual way the creature looked like. Anyway, let me tell you a bit about Fluffy. God, I can't even say his name without my heart starting to rise up in my throat when I think I had to monster sit the devil's pet. The small creature was approximately 3 feet tall. It had purple fur all over its body and 2 crimson tusks, one longer than the other. Its eyes were a bright hue of glowing pink, and it had 3 legs and 4 arms. The arms had little claws on them, probably so that it could grab its food better. I still couldn't believe it, but I was sure it was real. I had to do what he said in the letter, and I had to take care of it. I found myself in a situation in which I've never thought I'd be. I decided to call it a him, just like Satan wrote in his letter. Maybe that'd have helped. Fluffy was waking up, and I approached him. He was a bit scared. I could sense it, and when I tried to pet him on the head, he hissed at me, and that's when I noticed his dark orange tail that ended in an arrowhead tip. Classic demon stuff, right? I let out a whoa, and I saw his pink eyes and the tail both lit up in flames. The light was flickering while he focused on studying me and my moves. The tail was colored a bright flamey orange that seemed to contrast the dark hue pretty damn well. I wondered how should I call him. Here, Fluffy. Here, little demon. Add a monster? Fluffy, want some milk? I asked. He started wagging his tail and ran towards my leg. Fortunately, the fire was gone and nothing burned. Does Satan gives you milk in hell? I asked again, and I heard him bark sorta. It wasn't your traditional dog bark, more like 1,000 barks that echoed in one. You know, like could you imagine a creature of hell doing one? Yeah, that's exactly how it sounded. I took a bowl and put some milk in it, and he started drinking with his 3 tongues, and spikes started coming out from his back. That probably meant he liked it, I thought. I felt physically sick when I heard the sound of them erecting from under the flesh, and I started shivering with a fear that I'd never thought to experience ever in my life. I made his sleeping spot in the kitchen, and I tried to make it as comfortable and cozy as possible. After all, I didn't exactly know how to take care of a demon pet, except for the instructions I was given. Of course, I had to call in sick at work that morning because you don't get the chance every day to monster sit Satan's pet. Time passed on and nothing significant happened on that Tuesday. Oh, luckily I remembered I had to get his food for the next day. There was a butcher shop nearby, so it was a quick errand to run. I left him sleeping, and I wished that nothing bad would happen. I mean, Satan would have him trained by now, right? I bought like 20 pounds of chicken hearts, beef steaks, sirloins, and pork chops, and I put them in the freezer to make his lunch the next day. Then I heard my neighbor Gary blasting that stupid black metal shit and screaming vocals over the original song like a goddamn lunatic. Hey, fucking asshole, mind turning that down? I'm trying to rest? I angrily yelled. Up yours, you pussy. This is real fucking music, not that pop shit you listen to, his wife Karen replied. Hey, fuck you both, you demented scumbags. I'm gonna call the cops if you don't turn that shit down, you hear me? I said, blood starting to boil inside my veins. 5 minutes later, the music stopped. Fucking Gary and Karen, what a lovely couple. I saw Fluffy standing behind me growling. Sorry, little guy. I shouldn't have yelled. It's that they piss me off sometimes with that stupid musical vomit. I told him, but he didn't stop growling. I moved past him, but he was still standing there, motionless, just growling in their direction. I assured him it's all right and told him to come with me, so I can give him some milk. He happily obliged. Night came, and I took Fluffy to bed. Even though he seemed to listen to every word I said, there was still some sort of darkness in the way he looked at me. They say that the eyes are windows to the soul, so maybe that's exactly what he was doing. Trying to read my soul and see if I was fit to take care of him or not. Listen here, Fluffy. Your owner gave me strict rules and told me to be really careful about taking care of you, okay? So please don't start throwing tantrums in the middle of the night or become too curious about the neighborhood, okay? I told him, hoping that maybe he could understand. Still, I was trembling with fear. Then I remembered what Satan said at the end of the letter. 1 bark for yes, 2 for no. Do you understand? I asked him again, and I heard him bark once. We were starting to get along pretty good, and I went to bed for the night. Lights out. Someone knocked on the front door. I got out of bed to see who could have been at that late hour in the night. Half asleep, I opened the door to see Gary enraged with madness, drunk as a skunk and high as a kite, holding a knife in his hand. You disrespected my woman, you piece of shit. No one talks to her like that, he said, his hands shaking. Listen, man, I'm sorry, all right? I shouldn't have said those things, I told him, hoping in resolving the conflict peacefully. Of course, that wasn't the case. You can't reason with madmen. His right fist connected with my face, and I was sent on the floor, start filling my vision. My upper lip split, and I felt blood entering my mouth. The salty and coppery taste was something I haven't felt since I was in a school fight as a kid. I tried to punch back, but I couldn't match his enormous size and strength. He put the knife to my throat and asked me if I want to die. I shook my head as tears starting to form in my eyes. He was pressing the tip of the blade against my neck. I thought that the end would soon follow and I'd die at the hands of a drunken crack addict. He pocketed the knife and spat at my face, telling me that if I ever even look at them, I'd be dead. He ended by saying that if I'd call the cops, he'll kill me. Even if he were to be arrested, he'd hire a guy to kill me. Or worse, just cripple me. Make it look like an accident. I looked in the corner where the kitchen was and saw Fluffy standing there, just watching. I shook my head at him, not make a move. Then I pissed myself with fear, the warm liquid staining my pajama pants. Gary punched me one more time in the ribs, and I coughed blood on the floor. You're fucking disgusting, you stupid fuck, he said, right before leaving, slamming the door on his way out. I didn't want to call the cops straight away, because fear overtook all my other senses, and the guy was batshit crazy. I mean, he could have come back any second, and I never trusted a person as erratic as him. Besides, I had to deal with more important things than my split lip and piss pants. I raised myself, patched my lip, and went to take a shower. I was in and out of sleep for a few hours when suddenly I jolted awake when I heard the front door slamming shut. Someone was trying to rob me. I had to deal with a demon, a murderous neighbor, and now a burglar. Or maybe it was Gary who changed his mind and wanted to finish me off for good. Shit, shit, I thought. I didn't have anything to defend myself with, so I just took a pencil from my desk so I could stab the motherfucker in the eye if push came to shove. I checked the living room, nothing. I looked around, nothing. I went to the kitchen and turned on the lights. Fluffy was standing there with a human arm in his mouth while his tusks were dripping blood. I recognized Gary's tattoos on it before I stumbled and fell down on the floor. Fluffy was different. He was bigger in size, and now there were spikes all over him, and they dripped with blood too. He started wagging his tail and dropped the arm at my feet, barking at me to take it. Then he pushed it again with his tusks towards me. "Oh no, Fluffy! What the hell did you do?" I yelled. Big mistake, because his eyes and tail lit up again. "Sorry for yelling. Didn't mean to, it's just, I'm scared and you shouldn't have done that," I said. Then I saw Gary's head watching me from the corner of the room, his lifeless, dull eyes frozen with fear. I shrieked and fell on the floor again. Then from across the street, I heard Karen letting out a huge scream, one that woke up the whole neighborhood. I understood why Fluffy did it. He wanted to protect me from the bad neighbor, but he left me with a bad situation on my hands, so I had to think fast. "Fluffy, is the rest of the body here in my house?" I asked. He barked twice. "Did you leave it in their house?" I said while pointed to Gary and Karen's house. "Woof. Well, at least we got that figured out. I was afraid he would have eaten parts of him and get me in double trouble. He wasn't allowed to eat anything except on Wednesday, remember? I told him to stay put. I got some trash bags for Gary's head and arm, and then stuffed them inside the freezer with the rest of his food. Figured, I don't know, maybe he'd eat them in a few hours. I then wiped the floor clean with bleach and made sure there wasn't any more blood in the house. Fluffy went to sleep like nothing happened. What a shit show. Then I heard the police sirens, and as I watched through the window, I saw them pull up in front of my neighbor's house. I didn't even notice it was morning. I just stood on the side of my bed petrified, all kinds of scenarios going through my head. Jail for the rest of my life, death row, things like that. 11:30 in the morning. Time passed so fast while I stood there like a statue, still and unable to move, frozen with fear. I heard a knock on the front door. 2 police officers came to ask me questions. They wanted to see if I know anything about Gary's killing. As soon as I started talking, Fluffy started barking. "Hey, Fluffy, keep it down, please. I'm trying to talk with these officers about the tragic accident that happened last night. Do you understand?" He barked once. "I'm trying to save both our asses here," I thought. "His wife told us that you got in a fight yesterday, Mr. Turner. She said that you were pretty aggressive towards them. Mind telling us why?" One of them asked. I looked at Agent Suck and Fuck over standing on my porch and wished that Fluffy would come and rip their heads off. "I wasn't aggressive, officers. It's just sometimes they took that black metal music too seriously and forget that other people are living in the neighborhood. It was very loud and I was trying to get some rest," I told them, whimpering. More questions followed, and when I checked the clock, it said 11:51. "If that's all, officers," I said, trying to make them leave so I can feed the dog. "Got somewhere to be, sport?" Agent Suck asked me, patronizingly. I shook my head and said that I just needed to feed my dog. He's very hungry. "Come on, Gary, leave the man be. We'll be in touch, Mr. Turner." "Thank you for your cooperation," Agent Fuck said. His name was Gary. I felt like I was in some sort of bad cosmic joke. "What happened to your lip?" Officer Suck, or Gary, asked me. "You got your ass handed to you or something?" I said that my dog accidentally scratched me while I was training him. It was no big deal. Then they both said goodbye, and I was getting really nervous and stressed because I didn't want to miss Fluffy's lunchtime. 11:54. I ran to the fridge, and I took the frozen meat and quickly placed them in the microwave, hit defrost for 3.5 minutes, and fed Fluffy. The spikes came out again from his spine, and I asked him if he liked the food, and he barked once and kept eating. Then I heard another knock. It was Officer Gary again, this time alone. His voice tone was a little bit changed. "I know you killed him, Jonathan. I know you have his head and arm in the fridge," he said. No, fucking no. This wasn't happening. He pointed his gun at me. "On the ground with your hands behind your back. You're under arrest," he said while I followed his instructions. I was basically fucked. I'd go to prison first. Then Satan would come after me for not taking care of his pet. Then Officer Gary started laughing. "Oh man, you should see the look on your face right now. Get the hell up, man. I was just messing with you. I told you I like to bring the lols," he said, crying with laughter. "Where's my Fluffy?" Then the little creature came running from the kitchen and jumped on Officer Satan. Ugh. Thank you for taking care of me for him. My business here finished earlier than anticipated, and I am truly grateful for your absolute dedication towards the little fella here," Satan said. "Mind if I take all the meats from your fridge? Including the. I nodded. "Jonathan, I told you that you'll get a reward for being nice to my fluffers, didn't I?" he asked me. I nodded, and he told me that my mortgage has been paid off in its entirety. "I'll be seeing you around, Johnny boy. I like you. You could work for me. Think about it, will you?" he said. "Come on, Fluffy." "To the Batmobile," he finished. They hopped on in the car and started driving into the distance. Well, my piece of shit neighbor died. That meant no shitty black metal music unless Karen decided to go solo on the vocals. Maybe I'll get Fluffy again and teach her a lesson too if I get the chance. At least I'm debt-free, so I got that going for me, which is nice. Fourth story. Wendigo in my backyard. It was late night. My now boyfriend, I'll call him Jake, and I were getting ready to sleep in an acquaintance's playhouse in her backyard. The structure is about 5 by 8 with 3 windows and a fence directly next to one of the windows. The windows are large and close to the ground. Suddenly, I notice 2 shadowy figures through the cracks in the fence. I see what appears to be 2 people standing very close to the fence, about 1.5 feet away from the playhouse. This is near the alley. One is about 5 feet 9 inches and the other 5 feet 2 inches. No details were visible, just silhouettes. Fearing the cops were after him, Jake hides under the blanket and goes to sleep. I grab my knife and begin my vigil because something told me that wasn't what was out there. Then the scratching at the bottom of the wall begins. Whatever this was circled the playhouse and aggressively scratched, darn near constantly. It sounded like the size of a raccoon, but I could not, despite every effort, catch a glimpse. This was bizarre. I spent about 2 hours listening to this creature, sometimes make slow circles, sometimes very quick. I heard it walk on the tiny porch. Meanwhile, the larger figures outside the fence move just enough to know they are alive, but never step away from where they were standing. At first, I was paralyzed with fear. This was until I figured that whatever this was may well smell weakness. So I summoned up every ounce of the willpower I never knew I had. After a bit of wrestling with primal terror, I was calm and ready to fight. Although a bit angry at these fuckers that were invading my property. Fence is offset from the alley, so there is a nook of grass not visible from much elsewhere. The small creature walked over to the door and seemed to be pawing and sniffing, causing the hinges to rattle, desperately wanting to get to us for whatever reason. The way the window was angled, I should have been able to see it. The only gap in my sight was about the size of a rat. After living in a tent for some time, I know what rats sound like. This one would have to have been extremely rabid and raged out to maintain this loudness and not give up. We had no food or aromatic drinks. Rabid rats at that stage would tend to blunder, and this thing was doing anything but that. It was focused. Also, it didn't make any noise other than scratching. I would expect hissing, or at least an errant squeak. This continues for around an hour. Sometimes I move around and look out at weird angles trying to determine what the hell this is. Jake, lucky enough he is a heavy sleeper and was under a lot of blankets, so didn't wake up. Later, the sounds got steadily louder and started expanding, for lack of a better word. That crescendoed in aggressive scratching completely surrounding the playhouse, all the walls and roof, from more points than I could count. Still able to see nothing. My psyche was on fire, but not with fear somehow. I accepted death. I became euphoric for a few minutes, as I figured I should enjoy my last time on Earth. The blazing joy faded, but I remained calm and happy. The scratching calmed down, and after about half an hour, it petered out. The figures outside the fence were gone, but they hadn't been for long. I didn't see them leave because I was probably watching out one of the other windows. I woke up Jake because I wanted the help of a man to be on alert and defensive because I thought they hadn't gone far yet. We had been good friends for a couple years. At that time, him and I had been growing closer romantically, but only for a bit more than a week. I swallowed my pride because now or never was the time for the truth, and said, "I love you." He said it back, and I was so relieved and happy. I racked my brain, and neither him nor I can think of any logical explanation other than a creature not yet known to science. He heard the scratching before he fell asleep, but at that point it wasn't alarming. He agreed that it was about 4 hours from when he fell asleep to when he woke up. The scratching never ceased for more than a minute or two during that time. On another night, when he was camping with his friend, he heard aggressive, loud, and unexplainable noises of a much more dramatic nature. But this is a story for another time. Suffice to say, we believe there are cunning, hungry beasts with vocal, athletic, and sensory capabilities beyond imagination. These and other errant bizarre sounds remind us of stories of Wendigos. I dread to think, but the figures outside the fence I could have just been one, the shorter one being the hind legs and the taller one being the front. The top of the figures were in shadow. If that is the case, it could have been throwing its voice and creating the scratching noises itself. 3 creatures or 1. Theoretically, it could have been a rabid rat that just happened against all odds to stay out of sight, and I went into psychosis when I heard it all around me. But neither I nor my family has any history of hallucinations. I believe that I remain too composed to imagine such a thing. The figures could have been cops after him or robbers hiding out coincidentally at the exact time. I don't think so, though. Thank God these creatures sensed that we were not to be trifled with and wouldn't go down without a fight. I used to be a scaredy cat about every noise at night. My mindset towards this and life in general has improved since then because I realize I am capable of much more mental strength than I believed. 5th story. Scary home alone experience. This story takes place when I was 22 years old. I had just gotten home from a long night of stocking shelves at my local grocery store. I worked the closing shift, so I usually got home around midnight. I shared a cheap apartment with my roommate, Mark. We weren't in the best of neighborhoods, but I just felt lucky to have a place to live that wasn't my parents' basement. I threw my jacket on the coat rack next to the front door and walked into the kitchen to rummage through the fridge for something to eat. I had just pulled a frozen burrito out of the freezer when I noticed something weird. My bedroom door had been slightly open when I walked by the hallway. I know this doesn't sound strange at first, but I specifically remembered closing it that morning when I left for work. I like my privacy, so I always remember to shut my door when I leave for the day. I stepped back into the living room and looked down the hall. "Hello," I called. There was just dead silence. Not wanting to let the fear get the better of me, I walked across the living room and flicked on the hallway light switch. "Mark, is that you?" I asked. Mark had always been a bit of an odd guy, so I couldn't help but think that maybe he was trying to play some sort of weird prank on me. Maybe waiting to jump out of my closet or something when I entered my room. When I finally got to the bedroom door, I gently pushed it open. The light from the hallway illuminated a large portion of the room. I looked around, definitely feeling the creepy vibes. There was no one there, and nothing looked out of the ordinary. Just the usual, my twin bed with my nightstand just to the left. I closed the doors shut and walked back into the kitchen. I popped my dinner in the microwave and pressed the start button. While that was cooking, I turned on the television, ready to put on a scary movie to watch and relax. Suddenly, I heard a muffled thump coming from down the hall. At first, I thought it was the neighbors or something. They can be pretty loud sometimes, and it's not unusual to hear a loud bump in the night. But then it happened again, and this time I could tell for sure it was coming from down the hall. "Mark!" I called once more. The microwave beeped just then, and I nearly had a heart attack. "Yes, sorry." "Drop something," I could hear him say through the door. I'll admit, I felt a little better knowing that Mark was home. I walked back into the kitchen to get my food, and that's when my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a text message from Mark. "Hey dude, running a little late here at work. Could you please leave the door unlocked for me?" My stomach dropped to the floor, and a chill ran down my spine. I texted back, "Wait, you're still at work?" He responded only a few seconds later. "Yeah, why?" At that moment, there was another noise from the hall, and I looked up. The silhouette of a large man was standing there, holding what appeared to be a butcher's knife. I turned and ran towards the front door, hearing the heavy clunk of the man's boots behind me. He wasn't running. Instead, it sounded like he was slowly walking, taking his time. I didn't stop to look back. I ran down the emergency staircase and out into the parking lot where I called the cops. The cops showed up just a few minutes later. They went upstairs and searched my apartment, but they said they didn't find anyone. What they did find still terrifies me to this day. As they were searching the apartment, the cops found a note left on the kitchen table, held under a salt shaker. On that note, only one word was written: